He's a member of the Judiciary Committee who used to work as a constitutional lawyer and also clerked for Justice Samuel Alito. You were welcome in the arguments the last couple of days. You saw what I saw. First of all, your impression of the Solicitor General.
I think Solicitor General Varela did a good job. I think he's a good lawyer. I think he's a hard-working lawyer, and I think he did the best job he could in this case. He's got a hard case to make because the fact is Congress has overreached. That's what this case is about. That's why I think he's likely to lose. All
right, let's talk about the mandate, the core of the entire case. Yesterday was day two. Everybody was watching Justice Anthony Kennedy. They expect he'll be the swing vote, likely to get a 5-4 decision. What did you make of what he had to say yesterday? Because initial questioning from him seemed to suggest he did have problems with the mandate.
Yes, I think it did. He repeatedly indicated through his questions and through his body language, his facial expressions, his intonation, and then his reactions to the answers provided by the arguing counsel that he's got problems with it. And I think he made no secret about that. I'd be very, very surprised if we didn't see at the end of the day an opinion either authored or joined by Justice Kennedy concluding that the individual mandate is unconstitutional.
What do you make of his comments, though, towards the end of the arguments yesterday, where he said he did have concerns about the example the government kept talking about, the young person who is healthy right now, they're not in the market, they're choosing not to buy health insurance, but when they don't and something happens, they do drive up the cost of those who have chosen to get insurance. He talked about the proximate relationship of that young person to the person who has insurance. Seemed that he did have a concern there.
Yeah, I think he was making an argument. I think he was trying to explore the limits of the government's arguments as compared to those presented by the states. I think that is an argument. But I think in totality, his comments and his body language demonstrate the fact that he sees this really is a government overreach, and it's beyond Congress's power to tell individuals they have to buy health insurance.
There's been some speculation that the slimmest of margins, the possibility that the Chief Justice is persuadable in some way on this point as well. He did have tough questions for both sides. Do you have any doubts about where he will vote on this?
Look, he did ask tough questions for both sides. There's no question about that. But if you look particularly in yesterday's argument regarding the mandate, he used the first person singular repeatedly in order to express concerns that he has about the mandate. And by contrast, when he was explaining the opposite point of view in his questioning, he would refer to the government's position. He'd say the government's position is thus and such. And so there's a big difference in how he presented those questions. There is relatively little doubt in my mind as far as my ability to predict what the Supreme Court might do. If I had to predict which way the Chief Justice is going, I would say the Chief Justice is likely to conclude the individual mandate's unconstitutional, and he would be right.
Okay, well, today they got to the question of severability. If they get rid of the mandate, if you do get that 5-4, 6-3, whatever the decision is, knocking it down, where do you go from there? Does the rest of the law survive? And a number of the justices seem concerned about overreaching into your branch, talking about the co-equal branch, that Congress made decisions about what they put in this law. Do we then rewrite the entire law, the justices asked, or do we send this back to Congress as a shell? What do we do with it?
Justice Scalia and several of the other conservative justices strongly suggested that there would be a huge problem associated with trying to do surgery on the legislation in the event that the individual mandate's found unconstitutional. As Justice Scalia put it, it would be a little bit like taking the heart out of the bill and then saying the rest of it can survive. He suggested several times you take the heart out of a bill. If there is a heart in the bill, which this one he seemed to suggest is, then the whole bill has to go down, leaving it to Congress to decide what, if any, provisions to reenact.
Do you think Congress is up to the task? Because a number of them expressed real concern and skepticism about the fact that Congress doesn't seem to have a lot of bipartisan agreement on anything right now.
It doesn't, but that doesn't change the fact that Congress is the body that has been duly elected and constitutionally authorized to pass laws. And if you take the Supreme Court and you have the Supreme Court doing surgery on a law, fundamentally changing it, the concern there is that the Supreme Court could itself be legislating because it's producing a new law each time it excises something else out and leaves something else in. It can't do that. That's why I think the court should and likely will find that the individual mandate is not severable from the rest of the statute.
What did you think of Justice Ginsburg's comment today that it would be the more conservative approach, that was her word, to use not a wrecking ball but a salvage operation instead, trying to keep some of the law together? And a number of the justices said that's the presumption at the court. Even if you strike down part, you try to keep the rest of the law.
It is the presumption perhaps in other cases. In many cases, it has been the presumption that's prevailed. I respectfully but very forcefully disagree with any suggestion that that should be the rule in this kind of case. case. Whereas here, you've got sort of a keystone that serves as the centerpiece, the heart of the legislation, the individual mandate. If you take that out, everything else collapses around it. As a matter of simple economics, it's very difficult to imagine how the Affordable Care Act can function as a cohesive whole. And I don't think it can, and I think for that reason the court could and should and likely will find that it's not severable.
We will see. Senator Mike Lee, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
It's good to see you.